Hola mi gente! You are listening to Dancing Into Parenthood, the Entre la Familia series, where Latinos get to hear our stories about raising our children with special needs. I am your host, Dr. Divina Lopez, board certified pediatrician for over 10 years and mom to a little boy with autism and ADHD. My motherhood journey has been my greatest inspiration to creating this podcast because when it comes to our community, we have unique circumstances that we keep entre la familia that we need to share and no longer keep quiet about. On this show, I will give you the tools, information, and strategies to raising a happy and healthy human being. Each week, I am connecting you with other Latino families who have generously shared their personal journeys and struggles so that you can have clarity and insight on what it takes to raise such a special child. Before the episode starts, I want to remind you to follow us on social so you don't miss out on all the support I love to share with you. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok at Dr. Divina Lopez, and any place that you hang out on the internet. Also, I can't wait to start the parent sessions. We're starting group parent sessions and I want you to be there. I want to help guide you if you are struggling with parenthood, if you don't have support, if you're insecure about the choices that you're making for your child, if you just want to get it right for your child, then I encourage you to join the 12-week program where we will meet once a week and I will teach you how to advocate for your child, how to navigate the medical system, how to navigate the educational system, where to find your support system, and how to build healthy family relationships so we can break those toxic cycles, create boundaries with family members, and also learn to love ourselves through it all. All right, mi gente, I want to see you there. So make sure that you go to my website and that you drop your email in there. That way you are the first to know when the group sessions start. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to Dancing Into Parenthood. I'm Dr. Divina Lopez, board certified pediatrician of over 10 years and mom to a little boy with autism and ADHD. And today on the podcast, I have a super treat for you. As you all know, I pivoted to really share stories of parents who have been on this journey of raising a child with special needs. And the reason why I asked Kenia to come on is because Kenia, number one, is a friend of mine. She's shared her personal story with me about her son, Markem. And I think it's really valuable to hear these stories about adults living with autism and what the motherhood journey was like, right? So let me just give you a little background on Kenia. She is a small business entrepreneurship coach. She is a curriculum creator for culturally responsive programs, a best-selling author, an award-winning self-care strategist, a yoga teacher, and like I said, she's a mom too. She says 700 children, but
It's true.
so busy that I'm lucky that I got this time with her. So I'm gonna squeeze as much as I can out of it, Kenia. But thank you so much for being so generous. Because I know how busy you are. She has a beautiful daughter who's in all these pageants and everything, and right now she's scrambling with her. So I truly appreciate you finding the little bit of time to be on the podcast because I know that you know how important it is to share these stories.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Divina. You know that I adore you, adore your work. A big fan of everything that you do. And it's truly an honor, to be here. I'm so happy that you invited me to be part of, this this podcast that you're doing now, because I think it's so important and so timely. As we, shift from now changing even the terms of how we looked at children with autism. Now it falls under neurodiverse, all these things are changing day to day. So I'm really happy and grateful to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love you a lot. And I really support all the things that you do. And I think you know, one of the things that I know when I've had conversations with you, and I was asking you about like how to advocate for my son. I felt like you were really helpful with that, especially when it came to his education. And I was like really nervous, like, you know, what did you do? I wanted your tips and tricks. And, you know, that's the reason why I thought it would be so valuable to have you on the podcast. So, you know, I just really want to like dive into like what were the first like concerns that you noticed with your child? You know, how early on did you notice things? And what did you do in order to like address them with the doctor, or did you address them with the doctor, or did the doctor address it with you first?
Yeah. So going back, so my son is now, he's going to be 23. So I'm going to backtrack. The first signs were I played the comparison game. There was a friend who had a baby the same exact age, they were weeks apart, and she would visit me, and I would look at her child and look at mine and go, I didn't know that there were developmental delays, but I was just like, okay, her son's
And
doing
he's your first child.
my first. He's my first. And this is back before everyone is now well versed in these things, right? Or for the most part, we hope. It was our only reference to autism was Rain Man. That's it. This is what we're talking about. Like that's the time period that we're talking about. So there was no even thought that my son was autistic. And I remember seeing her son and seeing some of his milestones, and my son wasn't quite there.
Right.
And then, so those were the first signs. Didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just just a regular delay. Then the next big sign was that my son had no fear factor. There was no fear. So we would be on the playground, and all the other kids like knew the danger of being on the second level. And if you step, you're going to hurt yourself because you're going to drive. He didn't care. He was like, bloop. He would come down and it was like a little jello, come back up. And then I was like, okay, maybe he learned his lesson. Now he knows that he can get hurt if he comes up, went back up. There was no, so everything was just me living in fear and in panic. And then I just always noticed I had to chase him everywhere. Multiple times we had very dangerous situations where he crossed the main avenue in the Bronx just by one moment that somebody didn't look at him. He disappeared at Great Adventure, where I didn't want to even go enjoy a ride. And one of my friends was like, no, I'll watch him. Don't worry. I got him. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't trust anybody. I'm like, I can't. I need you to watch him. She's like, oh my gosh, you're so paranoid. I'll watch him.
Yeah.
I'll watch him. I came back to the same spot that I left him, and all I saw was his little raincoat on the floor. And I already knew, I'm like, oh my God, he ran away from her. And so I lost him at Great Adventure. He almost jumped into the pool at Jones Beach with like 5 people watching him. Like, it's just a matter. He was like a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And those were my first signs. So I brought it up to the doctor. The first thing the doctor said was, didn't recognize anything. He said, oh, it's because you're speaking both languages at home. He's not picking up. And that was
one thing I want to talk about. How old was he at this time?
At this point, he's about 2.5, 2.
2.5.
So I'll say 2, around 2.
Was he speaking any words?
No.
0 words.
No, he was said, the most he said was, and I thought those were his first words. He said, oh man. And I said, oh my God, he finally said mama. And my sister pointed out, no, it's from Dora the Explorer. Swiper, no swiping. Oh man.
Yeah.
That was it. So there were no words. And then I put him in a regular daycare. And it was a Jewish community center. I said, okay, I feel like this center is great. They're really good with children. They're very structured. And that was my first indication. The first time that somebody pointed out, listen, you should get your son evaluated. It was the first time that I ever heard someone address it, but it was never a doctor. It was the director of the center he went to for daycare.
So when you went in for his like checkups, did the doctor do like screenings with you? Did they do any like developmental questions? Do you remember that?
I don't remember exactly, but I do recall there was nothing of concern that the doctor saw. What he said was that, we were speaking both languages at home, and that was probably a cause for the delay, but nothing else was alarming to the doctor.
Yeah. I've heard that many times, and I tell parents like that it's not true.
Hence why my son doesn't speak Spanish, but okay.
Right.
Because we changed that.
Yeah. All right. And then, so you enroll him in this daycare. They have their concerns and they ask you to get him evaluated?
Yes.
Okay. And then what was, or how did you seek an evaluation? Did you go back to his pediatrician? Or were
Yes,
you
they gave
able to
me,
just
well, the
go?
daycare gave me exact instructions. They said you need a script from your doctor to get a speech evaluation, do physical, occupational, I get the whole thing, and sociological, like all of it.
Yeah.
This was all new language for me. I was like, what's going on? And
Right.
then, it's interesting times because back then people are more well versed now. So my whole family was like, well, there's nothing wrong with him. Why are you trying to label him? He's
Yeah.
not, he's fine. He's just a little boy. And so I had a lot of pressure. And even from my husband, who was still supportive, but there was still that machismo part of it of like, well, my son is not defective. There's not anything wrong with him. Like, and I was like, I didn't say he was. I'm just saying something's not right.
Right.
And so I had that pressure. And then I still moved forward with getting him evaluated. And that's when I recognized that I didn't know anything about what these reports meant, but they did approve him for center-based services at the age of 2.5.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And
But
so,
still no diagnosis at this
right.
point.
So
Nothing.
they just look to see like what are the delays, and then they provide some services for him
Mhm.
at school, which is fantastic even back then to be able to like go
Yes.
through this pretty smooth transition. Because how long would you say did that whole thing take? Like from someone having a concern at the school to him actually like getting some services started?
Well, because I'm his mother, it probably was faster than most people because
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate and I was fighting once I knew there was something wrong. So I would say maybe 6 to 8 months.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to just tell you, like the time frame these days, post-pandemic, it could be
Mm.
like 2 years.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it depending on where you are in this country, it could
Yeah.
really be that long of
That's
a
really
delay.
scary. Yeah.
It is. It's extremely scary because we know how important early intervention is,
Yep.
right? Because the earlier you start services, the
Yeah.
better chances that your child has at being a really like an independent
Yeah.
adult. And
Yeah.
I always have to stress this to parents, and I'm probably going to say it in every single podcast because this is the number one thing for you to do it. There should be no shame, even when you have your family members, because especially as Latinos, especially in our community, unfortunately, there are studies that show this, that in the Latino community, we are the ones who get like our diagnosis happen much later if it does, right? Our children are not getting diagnosed because the families are ashamed to say something,
Mhm.
right? They think that I'm a bad parent. What did I do
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
How come my kid is like this? And I think as a mom, just like you said, as a mom, something is not right. And you just want to make sure that you're doing everything possible for your child, right? You want to give them every opportunity possible so that they can thrive and do well, because there
Mhm.
is a strong possibility for many children with autism to actually do really well. So even if you don't have a diagnosis, but at least you start getting some services, right? Let's say,
Right.
they were just like, oh, it's their speech delay,
Yeah.
there's some behavioral things, who cares? Just start the
Just
services.
get
There's
it.
nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about what your family members or friends or fulano or whatever said. I
But
don't care. Yeah,
yeah.
even if it's your own spouse, right? Who
Yeah.
may, feel like, oh, you're just, I used to get accused of overdiagnosing my son, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you're overdiagnosing him. How dare you say that about him? He's brilliant. He's this, he's the next thing.
You're
He's
like, I'm not saying he's not, but there's
right.
something else. Yeah. And
But there's
it's
something
interesting.
needing to
So
be
we'll
done.
talk about, my son's name is Mark, and we'll talk about his success, I'm sure, later in the podcast. But I do want to say that I really did everything in my power to get him early intervention, every service you can think about. And even with everything that I did from the age of 2, there are still major challenges. He's super successful in certain areas. So what I say to those parents that are thinking about or hesitant is, please don't do that, because even with everything that I did, I'm still facing challenges. And if anybody tells you, because I used to hear this a lot, oh, if you label them, it's going to affect them and it's going to
For
stay
the
on their
rest of their
record.
lives. Yeah.
Don't go for it. Don't believe it. Don't buy into it. None of that matters. None of that. My son was like, again, we'll talk about it in a second, but he got a full ride to college, like honors college, graduated with, cum laude, like all of it. Like, do not buy into the whole, oh, don't label them, because unfortunately what happens is that Where does the funding come from? The funding comes from the label. So if you don't have the proper label or the diagnosis or the classification, you're not going to get the services. So you saying, I don't want that, guess what you also do? You hurt your child because you won't get the funding. That's where the funding comes from. It's a two-way street. It's like, okay, you have this classification or diagnosis. And I guess we could talk about the difference between classification and diagnosis. And here's where the funding comes from. If you don't have this, you can't get the services.
It doesn't open the door for everything else.
Open the door. So it's a challenge. It's unfortunately, it's what I call, it's the game you have to play. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And this is why I can't stand when pediatricians like do this. Oh, let's just watch and wait. No, let's not watch and wait.
No. Watch and wait. It's going to be 2 years, as you said. Let's watch and wait after we get the diagnosis. If something changes, we can
then they can use whatever, changes that they need to do in the future. But let's just start everything as soon as possible, because we know that that is the predictor of what's going to be, help our children to be successful in their life, right? And that's always our goal as parents. And one other thing that I want to hit on is, because you already said the word machismo. There is a study that actually they did on the Latino community in parents with children with autism, and it was, I believe it was close to like 80% of the moms who had to deal with the machismo, and the divorce rate is also very high.
Wow.
Yes, in the Latino community. And so moms are oftentimes left alone to raise their children because the men will leave because they don't want to even deal with this. And they think that it's the mother's fault. She babies them, she spoils them. And, I got that all the time. And not just from my ex-husband. I also got it from my own family. Oh, well, he's
ignorance. When you don't know, you don't know. Yeah.
The next thing. Yeah. So, I just always want to encourage moms, like, if you know, because we do have that intuition,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Then go ahead and do what you got to do. It doesn't hurt your child to get an evaluation. It's not anything invasive. It's always worth it. And you really, because of these wait times right now, right? You want to get like on a list as soon as possible, because the longer you delay, the longer you're delaying your child from getting any sort of help. All right. So
I appreciate you very much as a pediatrician, really speaking on that end, because it's very important. And I can see doctors going, let's wait. And I think that's what happened with us.
They do it a lot.
We never got the diagnosis from, I don't want to jump ahead, but I was the one that, like, I hate to say this, I self-diagnosed. I walked in, I was like, can you just give me the autism diagnosis? Because we need to get the show on the road.
We know that this is right. Yeah. We know that that's what this is, right? Like, let's call the spade a spade. Because sometimes they want to give all these other diagnoses. They want to do like anxiety,
speech delay, other health impaired, all those things.
And you're like, come on, this plus this equals that. So let's call it what it is, right? And I feel like that oftentimes happens, especially when parents, when they notice some hesitancy in the parents too, and they're like, well, let's just wait. Let's wait until 7. Let's wait until 9. No.
And Dr. Divina, I do want to say something. I feel that because it's a cultural thing. So culturally, we respect doctors, right? You know that. So what the doctor says is gold. It's like gold. So because we have that culture, and it's respect. Of course, it's respect. However, that's one of the greater challenges, because if the doctor feels a certain way and it may not be the right match, or that will give you the diagnosis, you go, well, the doctor said, and then that's what you hold on to. And then when you fast forward 3-4 years, you're like, oh my gosh, I should have gotten a second opinion, or I should have went with my gut. I should have went, because at the end of the day, a doctor is a doctor. You are the parent. You have that intuition. You live with your child day in and day out. You know, intuitively, if something's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said at first he didn't receive a diagnosis of autism. He had these other diagnoses. Tell me now, like, what actually
he had no diagnosis. He didn't get it. He didn't have any diagnosis. We got, I don't know if your audience knows. So the difference between a diagnosis and a classification is that a classification is what they call in the school, in the education system. So if you classify,
so it's done by like the school psychologist.
Yeah, the school psychologist. So you get a classification. A diagnosis is done by a medical professional.
Right.
So Markem had a classification, but he had no official diagnosis. So he was still able to receive services, but not under the autism umbrella. He was classified as other health impaired, which meant that he was getting services, but not necessarily the services that he would have needed for a child that had autism. So there was still that gray area. So he didn't get diagnosed until he was 7.
Right. So
even though he had services in that too.
I'm happy you brought this up, because a lot of times when things are done through the child study team at school, parents think like, oh, this is it. And sometimes they will actually give a diagnosis of autism, right? But the problem is that insurance companies will not accept that diagnosis from the child study team. It has to actually be from a person who is trained to do autism evaluations. So that could be an MD, that could be a DO, that could be a psychiatrist, it could be a psychologist, but it has to be one of those sort of professionals, a developmentalist. Those sort of people are the ones who do the autism evaluation and then give the medical diagnosis. And then from the medical diagnosis, your insurance company will then be able to provide you some services. So, you know, a lot of people don't know that, right? They think, oh, I got the diagnosis from school. And it's like, no, but you're not getting all these, you're not getting,
that's a classification.
You're not getting all these other services that are more intense that may help your child, like
ABA therapy, things like that. Yeah.
Right. And you can maximize, right, the amount of time that you're getting when you have a medical diagnosis. They're not just getting services at school. Now, maybe you can also get some outpatient services as well. You can get some in-home services. So you have to know the difference between the two. And I think that there is a lot of like confusion when it comes to that. I noticed that when I was doing the autism evaluations virtually, like a lot of parents would tell me like, I already have the diagnosis. And I'm like, then why are you here? You're here because you're not getting the services, and I need to do the evaluation now. And, you know, because we use certain questionnaires and we do an observation.
So
and
think about that, how parents aren't even being educated to advocate for their child. So I learned how to advocate through the School of Hard Knocks, like through other parents. We're like, you know, like,
talk about that. Talk about it.
Yeah. So at 7, I'll just share, I was sitting with a parent that has passed away recently, but she had an autistic child and they were playmates, and my son got along with her son, and she sat with me and she said, I'm not sure, do you know Markem's autistic? And I was like, and I was offended. I was like, listen, homegirl, just because your child is autistic, don't be trying to bring my son into this. I'm like, this has got nothing to do with me. Right. And when she said that, I was just like, no, he's not. And she's like, yes, he is. And it like really created like this tension between us. And she left me thinking, and I started researching. We don't have all these agencies we have now and all these different areas. The internet wasn't what it is now, right? So the only resource I found was Autism Speaks.
I love Autism Speaks.
Yeah, so I looked at their definition and their criteria for what fits and as someone with autism. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's autistic. I was like, no one had used the word with me ever. He's 7 at this point. So I just called, I just basically went in Institute of Basic Research. I think for your audience, if they don't know where to go, Institute for Basic Research in Staten Island actually operates on a sliding scale. So at the time, so it's a really great agency that I've used twice for my son. And I'll just jump ahead to say that my husband was actually diagnosed at 35 years old. I didn't realize when we were having a lot of marital issues. I was like, dude, you have what he has. Like,
then you're like, wow, this all makes sense. This is,
and we did it. He did it as a joke, because he was like, I'll go get diagnosed if you go get diagnosed as crazy. Because we were all kind of, just had our own issues and stuff. So he went and he was diagnosed. So he had Asperger's. And Asperger's, I do want to address that whole diagnosis because now it doesn't exist, right?
It doesn't exist.
So we went and I walked in, and of course I was that mom. I was like, hi, my son has Asperger's and I just need you to diagnose him. And of course the doctor laughed at me and she was like, it's okay. She's like, let me do my job. But of course she came back with the diagnosis of Asperger's, and it was like, I just knew it. And from there, my fight was a little bit different, because then now that he had the Asperger's diagnosis, right, from a medical professional, now I went back to the school and I changed his classification from other health impaired. And now I knew how to play the game. And I need that to change to autism. And it's interesting because even at the school, I don't know why the resistance. They're like, well, he's still getting the same services. You don't really need to change it. And I was like, I don't care. Give me the autism diagnosis. So
I went through the same exact thing.
Yeah,
They
I
were
don't
like,
know why.
oh,
Like,
wait
yeah,
a minute.
yeah,
You're bringing this new diagnosis to us. And
yeah.
they literally did
You're
it like
shaking
this.
things
Like,
up. Yeah.
oh, well, do you know what this means? And I was like, well, explain it. Do you
As a
know what
doctor,
this
they're going to
means?
ask you that. That's pretty
I don't
ridiculous.
tell people I'm a doctor. I don't tell people I'm a
Oh,
doctor.
okay. I love that.
Nobody ever suspects
Ooh,
that this little Latina is a doctor, right? Nobody ever suspects that. And
I
so
love that.
that's like a little trick that I hide, and that doesn't come out unless it has to, right?
Mm.
I just want people to know that this is my son, I'm his mother, and I'm
I'm
gonna
a
do
mom. Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
right possible for him. And then if I have to, use that, then I do it. But because I it shouldn't matter. It
Yeah, it
shouldn't
shouldn't matter.
matter,
Everybody
right?
should be treated right. Exactly. It's so
Right.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter. I know it does. I had to definitely use it this past year with school. But I remember when I first gave them the diagnosis, it was like, oh, the whole IEP team was like, wait a minute, this changes everything for him. And I was like, well, yeah. So make sure that we are maximizing his services at school. Meanwhile, my son is a very high functioning kid. So they were like, oh, well, does he really need? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
I want him to receive everything that he has the right to receive,
Right.
because we don't know what kind of a difference that may make for him. And I want to give him every opportunity possible. And I still got a lot of like pushback for a long time. A lot of pushback. Like these IEP meetings, I don't know how you felt in them, but I couldn't stand them at all.
The mom who passed away, she trained me. She said, even when you sign the paper, make sure you don't sign. The signature could mean like you agree. So make sure
you
you
agree to
sign,
everything.
and in parentheses, you put attendance only. She taught me how to record meetings. Now you can legally record without anybody knowing you're recording, as long as it's a conversation between two people. But I had to, back then, you had to disclose that you were recording. So I would come with my little recorder. They hated me. And I was like, this meeting will be recorded. You had to give them 24-hour notice. So they would record me. I would record them. It was like the most awkward thing in the world. And once I learned how to play, once I learned how to play the game, and I say it because it is a game, and I'll share a story about my biggest challenge with school, but in a moment. But what I do want to share with parents that they may not be aware is that you can create your child's own goals. Do not let the school just create their goals. So the school may say, I want little Johnny to be able to do XYZ by the end of the year. Yeah, but they're probably creating a goal that they can meet. And then they're like, yay, we're awesome.
They're not challenging them enough.
They're not challenging them.
Right.
But if you create goals that you want your child to achieve and they don't meet them, that means they're failing your child. And there's something called FAPE, free and appropriate public education. So if your child is not meeting the goals that you set in their IEP, then that means that may not be the right setting for your son or daughter, which allows you now to fight for a different setting, which is what I did. So my son did not go. He went to a private school from 7th through 12th grade because a lot of those goals I set up, he never achieved, which gave me now the leverage to fight for a school that would understand him and be able to meet him where he was, because he was very high functioning, but I knew he wouldn't survive in the regular high school because the high school was 7th through 12th grade. And I couldn't imagine my little 11-year-olds going and being
into that environment,
and going to the bathroom with grown men and whatever. He would say the wrong things. He would bump into someone and someone would say, oh, he touched me the wrong way because he didn't have spatial awareness. And I was like, absolutely not. So that's something that I think a big takeaway for parents to know.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, because this is the sort of information that other moms who have already gone on this journey will share with you that you won't know. And this is why
it's only the moms. Through the moms is where I learned this.
It's the mom network, right? And that's why I decided to make this whole pivot, because I'm like, oh my God, I have a lot of information I could share with people, and I know that they need this. But I think not only is it important to know that you can set your own goals, but it's important to know that you could bring an advocate with you. Because they don't like just come out and tell you all of this information, right? It's important to know that if you're not happy with what's going on at the school, you can even bring an attorney with you. And to fight.
And I had to do that. I'll share a little bit about that if you want me to share that. I actually had to bring an attorney.
Yeah. And this is where autism speaks, I think, is like very amazing resource to use, because they will give you the right resources when it comes to advocacy and when it comes to even, perhaps needing an attorney, so that you can understand like what are your children's rights, because the school is not going to spell it out for you. They will give you this huge handbook and be like, here, and you don't even have time to go through all this thing, but they will say, well, we told you everything and we informed you, right? And so when you put your little signature on all of those things, you're basically accepting like, yes, I do have all of this information, and yes, I do know what to do. But meanwhile, you probably never ever looked at that handbook because you just don't have time, because
you don't know how to read it or understand
the language.
And if you have your CSC for your IEP meeting, just because you had that meeting, you don't have to wait till the next year. You can request as many CSEs as you want, because things change. We change as humans every day. And with Autism Speaks, I want to say, you know what? Don't necessarily rely on one organization to have all the answers. Do your due diligence, because Autism Speaks may believe in one thing that you don't. They were an incredible resource for me for information, but there's certain things that they also believed in, or they promoted that maybe I didn't agree with. So use all these resources as a buffet table. Take what you want, leave what you don't. And because it's really important. But I think I do want to share a story that that's probably like one of the most impactful stories of my son's journey, where now he has the autism diagnosis, and we're going back to, I don't remember. He was in 7th grade at this point. Now it's 6th grade. Now he's supposed to go into 7th grade, into the high school. And I'm like, he's not going to survive there. I'm going to lose my son. He's going to be bullied. He's going to lose his innocence, his wonderment. He's going to be beaten up here, like emotionally. So I just was like, I fought really hard. Unfortunately, at this time, my husband was fighting cancer. So it was a very heavy load on me at the time. And I had 2 younger children as well. So I had an attorney, because I wanted him to go to a private school that I had my eye on for years. I was like, it's the perfect place for him. So we went to this IEP meeting, and I had to hire an attorney. I'm going through this emotional struggle with knowing I'm losing my husband to cancer. And because he was in the elementary school and now going into high school, and I say high school because there was no middle school, it's just 7th and 12th, they brought 2 attorneys against me. So the 2 attorneys are one on each side. They had the high school team on one end, all the school psychologists, the teachers, all these people on one side, and then they had his elementary school on the other side. So we had about at least 15 people at this CSC meeting. And the fight was, should he go to his homeschool, or can I get a private education for him? And a private education, again, for the parents' education, you can fight for a non-public school. A non-public school means that it's still a private school, specifically for New York. I don't know if New Jersey is different. A non-public school that is on a list of approved schools that your child can go into and they can get. So we're not talking about Catholic schools. We're talking about special needs schools that fall under non-public, but the state will still pay for it if they choose to let your child go, or if you fight for it. So
your district has to release them. And because the funding that they receive for your child in your district
go to this,
goes to another district. This is why they fight.
And they're not happy with that.
Right. They hate it.
So we're sitting at this table, and now all I need is, remember, it's a game you have to play, unfortunately. So I'm sitting here, and the goal is to get the school to agree that my son can go to another school. So we're at March, at the end of a school year. By March, there's no seats available for September. Those seats are gone for for those private schools. But I knew that I was going to have this fight. So in September, I secured his seat, and I went to the school that I wanted him to go to. I had to sign a contract that I would be liable for $30,000 if my son, they did not allow my son to go to this school, because they were holding the seat specifically for me. But I was so confident that he would get that seat. So we fast forward to March, trying to get this package out, the package meaning that they would agree that the school's not right. So we're fighting, and the 2 attorneys are like, nope, you're not going to go to another school. We'll give him an aid. We'll give him this. He could use the nurse's bathroom. He doesn't have to use the public. They were throwing everything in the kitchen sink.
So many accommodations for him.
Every accommodation. I'm like, why are you restricting my son? So I'll never forget, the school psychologist from the high school was like, because they're oblivious. Teachers don't know what goes on. The attorneys know, but so the school psychologist from the high school goes, wait a second. There's a place for him. There's a place where he'll thrive, and they get him, and he'll be doing He goes, let's send him. And I'm like, yes.
Thank God.
And I said, listen to me. I said, I may lose my husband to cancer, but I promise you, I will not lose this fight to the end. I'm going to get what my son needs. And to schools. So they like look at a list, but they're laughing. They're literally laughing at me. I see them. They were like, I'm like, you are evil.
Yeah.
Oh, at the end of that meeting, I said, hey, can we send a package to this high school? And they're like, you're never going to get in. I'm like, but please, can you please?
Like,
I start
please
playing
just
like the dumb
cooperate
role,
with
the
me.
innocent. I'm like, just send, yeah, just please send it to the, and they're like, okay, fine, whatever. But they're laughing because they know he'll never get a seat there. So we come back to the next CSE. They knew that we had played them. So now I'm sitting at this table for the next CSE, and we're trying to convince the school to please change the classification from autism to emotionally disturbed, because it's the only way that he's going to be able to get to the school, and they refused. And finally, his teacher caught on. God bless her soul. She was like, she's like, Marken is emotionally disturbed. He's totally emotionally disturbed. She understood how to play the game. And then the speech therapist said, oh yeah, he's emotionally disturbed. Every single person, I have to share that my district is a union-free school district, meaning that these teachers are not protected by a union. So every single one of those people risked jobs and said, and they all literally held hands and said, oh, he's emotionally disturbed, to the point that the school had to agree. And now my son went from autism to emotionally disturbed. So that's why I tell your listeners, please don't get hung up on the label. I labeled my son emotionally disturbed just to put him in the right environment. Now that school accepts autism, but I did what I had to do. And I'll just fast forward to say he graduated with honors. He received tons of scholarships at graduation. From there, he received a full scholarship to Adelphi University. He graduated cum laude recently. And all these things, National Honor Society in the high school, all these things he was able to do because of these labels. So please, please, please don't be deterred from labeling your child. It's unfortunate. Again, that's where the funding, you have to follow the money. Wherever the money is, whatever that label's attached, you just unless you have the money, and then it doesn't matter.
Right. And I mean, who has the money to pay? Like it's like university tuition for these.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sometimes even more, right? So most people don't have the money to come out of pocket to pay these tuitions in order to get these services. And you know what these schools provide is not just an education, but it's the enrichment part of it that helps with your child's
socialization.
Yes, it's like it's a whole different world, and the way they nurture your child is a whole different level than you're ever going to get at like a public school. And so we have to understand these things and educate, parents about it, because a lot of times they don't know about it because nobody tells you about this stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And unless you know someone who went to one of those sort of schools, and then you're like, oh, okay, you see the benefits of it. And a lot of times they even have adult programs, or they will do some sort of trainings in order to help your children to get a job and, just to be able to live, almost that sort of like normal adult life, which is what we want, right? Because there are different levels. It is a spectrum. So everybody's somewhere different. But again, if you don't give your child all the opportunities, then they perhaps they're not going to flourish the way they would had they had those sort of like resources available to them. But yeah, I want to say like, thank you so much for talking about all of that, because it's a true fight. And I mean, you were going through so many other things, and that battle really is a war. Like it feels like a war. They are attacking you. You like have to be really, really strategic in the way that you do all of this. You have to make sure that you keep all of your records straight, that you have these stories, and that you're organized with all of this, that you keep your appointments, and that you don't forget to do those things, because sometimes we think, oh, we got the diagnosis, and now, you let things fall through the cracks.
Hard for parents. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And sadly, at that moment, I couldn't believe all these people were fighting me when they know that I have a sick husband. And I can't say all of them, but a select few. I was like, it just didn't make sense. Like, why are you fighting me? Why, like, it just didn't make sense. I was like, where's your heart? Where's your compassion? Where is your empathy? And as you know, my husband passed away a year later. And, it was like, that was a sweet redemption to know that my son went to this school. But I will fast forward to say that he recently graduated, but another now bridge that we have to cross is workforce development. And what I find is sadly that people are talking the talk, but not walking the walk. Now there's this whole neurodiverse thing. Oh, we support neurodiverse people. Do you really? No, they don't. It's a matter of like putting it out there that you do. So I'm like trying to figure out, how do these big companies support neurodiverse people? Is it first you get the job and then they give you accommodations, or do they help you, get your foot in the door? So Marken is currently like in between. He's a camp counselor right now, but he will be seeking employment. And the sad part is that post-graduation, there is no support for neurodiverse people. There's no hand-holding. You're forgotten in that way. So, for those parents that are like, should I do this? Of course, do this, because you will be on your own again once your child turns 18 or graduates college. And for me, I don't take it as something negative. I'm looking at it as this challenge, as an opportunity for me to learn so I could teach others. Because my son is not the only one now. He's brilliant. He's eager to work, but where are the opportunities? Like, where do they really exist in a world where, we talk so much about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? I don't necessarily see it for those that are on the spectrum, high functioning, So that's another bridge we're crossing now, but we'll figure it out. We'll crack that code, and then we'll have another conversation.
Yeah, and then you'll get back on the podcast again to share the information. But one thing that I also want you to talk about, because I know that you are, heavy in your faith in God and everything, like what role did that play in your life? Because you have to have a lot of faith of like, God, I know you got this, I know you got us, this is my child, this is your child, right? If you would just like elaborate a little bit on
Yeah, absolutely. My faith is everything, especially as I said, I faced this difficult challenge with my son. And at the same time, simultaneously, I'm losing my husband to cancer. So it was one of those things that, I like to say everyone has faith until your faith is tested. And when I had to dig deep and really surrender. And as you know, I wrote my memoir, and the name of the memoir was Surrendering, because I had to surrender. I had to trust that if I'm doing everything, I think this applies to everything in life, right? If you're doing the best that you can, and sometimes your best, everybody's best is different. And on any given day, your best is different. If I am doing the best that I can, and I'm putting up a good fight, right? And this is what I have, without like completely losing my mind or losing my capacity to function. If this is my best, I have to put my trust in God that whatever will be, and that will all work out in the end. Because how much more can I give? How much more can I do? I think that's the point. And I think that's the crossroad of what is within our power and what is not. And that's where surrender comes in, and really trusting and praying. And we should continually pray, right? But that really is where we have to trust that if we don't have the answer, that's why we have a higher power. And that has brought me through so many different areas of my life, because it's not, just because you've experienced pain, you're not exempt from more pain. So I continually have to tap into that and remember, this is out of my control. Surrender. That's it. It's easier said than done.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah. And sometimes I think I'm surrendering, and then it's like, no, you're not. You're still worried. You still have so much anxiety. You're not really having like all this faith that God is going to take care of it. And then it's like, it's another lesson of like, you need to do more. This is not real surrender.
Stillness matters. I think for moms, I do want to say this, the surrender part, if you are not sure if you're surrendering or not, it's not like saying, God, I leave this to you. It's really being still. And I mean, physically still, where sometimes you just slow down and you're with your breath, and you let yourself just be in the moment, feel, cry, whatever it is. And know that you don't have to have the answers. But I think that when you're a fighter, you're consistently fighting, and we don't have that stillness. And that stillness is not only important for prayer and surrendering, but even to calm our nervous system, because we can have a nervous breakdown when we are so, when we're
overwhelmed with everything.
When we're overwhelmed. So I think even in that sense, that stillness is very important, just to calm ourselves and be able to recalibrate, because we're of no use if, we've we're at our wits
We're
end.
not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to prioritize our self-care.
Sleep is a big one. I'll just say that. You wanted me to talk a little bit
Sleep
about
is
wellness?
huge.
Huge,
Yes,
huge.
go ahead. Yes, do your thing, girl.
So I'll just share like my method. Dr. Divina knows my method pretty well. So when my husband was sick with cancer, we had gone to like all the best doctors in New York trying to figure out, not even in New York, West Palm Beach. We exhausted over $40,000 trying to figure out how to save his life. Unfortunately, we couldn't save his life, but we did extend his life by 5 months when the doctors gave him 2 weeks to live. And what I recognized was that key things, I won't get into the whole method, but key things are important. And it's obviously your sleep. If you're not sleeping, your body cannot heal.
You can't function. You can't function. Yeah.
And and at the most basic level, it causes anxiety. On a more serious level, it causes cancer. It's like, it's literally that, and we don't get to choose our poison, right? It's like, unfortunately, those things happen. And alkaline diet, right? Like really being mindful of what we're putting into our body, processed foods and things like that, because when we're under tremendous stress, if we're putting in junk into our body has to work that much harder to break it down, which then affects us emotionally, affects our sleep, affects our energy. So it's a whole trickle effect. And then really honoring, I think, the other basic, and exercise, movement, right? Super important. But the other thing I want to mention is your relationships, really, that especially if you have other children, not forgetting about your other children or your relationships, like really being able to, nurture those other relationships while you're challenged and surrendering and all that. And especially for those that may be in a difficult situation or relationship where your partner doesn't agree with you, that's when your self-care is that much more important. But also recognizing that people don't have to agree with you. I pray that those people that are not in agreement, that they're still able to move forward in resources and the help. And if you're able to do that, just stay in that space for now, and recognize that, if two people are in disagreement of something, it just is, you can't change it. That's where the surrender and the prayer comes in. So those are the things that really helped me in my journey and continue to help me in so many ways.
And I think, finding a really good support system is
let's
so
forget about
important.
that. A community, whether it's church, whether it's just, a dance group, something that you're able to, don't forget to have fun. Like life is really serious. Just fun, laughter, super important. Nature, walking. If you don't feel like working out, sometimes I don't feel like working out. I feel like it's too much stress on my body because I'm going through a lot of
because your
pressure.
cortisol is already high and you're like,
just walk. Because I find sometimes, even when I struggle with, I want to lose weight because I gained a little bit of weight here, I lose more weight when I'm walking than I'm when doing hardcore workouts, because you're actually alkalining your body when you walk. And your
cortisol doesn't go up as high when you're doing things that are a little more gentle on your body. And I think everybody equates like the exercise has to be like this hardcore routine, and I'm like, it actually doesn't, right?
There's a time and place for that. And if you want to, I love my strong arms when I have it, but when I'm under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, I don't need HIIT classes. I need to be gentle with my body. I need to walk.
You need to love yourself.
I just need soft. I need a soft life when things are crazy. So HIIT is good when you don't have that much stress, or you can create
when
space.
Things are going really nice, and up and down craziness.
Because exercise is stress on your body, So you just listen to your body is what it is, and you'll know what you need on any given day.
Absolutely. I think, a lot of times we isolate ourselves when we are going through these huge challenges because we think other people are not going to understand, or, we just think this is happening to us, and, what am I going to do? And you're trying to figure it out, and you get really stuck in your head. And so, it's so hard to change your mindset in those times. And that's when we really have to release it to the higher power or whatever your source is, right? If it helps you to speak to a therapist, if it helps to be a part of a parenting group where you hear it and it gets normalized, right? These stories are very normal when you hear them from other parents that are going through the same things you're going through, and maybe they can offer some really good advice. And so I encourage parents to not isolate yourself, because I did that for a very long time.
Oh
I
yeah.
isolated. I thought like I had to have all the answers. And I don't usually ask people questions and stuff like that. I was
Especially as a doctor, I can imagine there's like kind
it's
of like,
harder.
yeah.
Yeah, it is harder. So, I think putting yourself in those spaces where it's normalized and where you can actually get some good advice, and just some people to lean on, right? Because maybe today you feel depleted, but one of the other, moms in the group or something may be able to like really offer some encouraging words or some encouraging practices or something like that. And so, I encourage people, don't isolate, look for your support group. It's one of like the most important things that you can do. Or even if you have a great practitioner who is one of those people who loves to do the stuff that I do, I would say absolutely, like, take advantage of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
um
I always like to say the person you help today may be the person that helps you tomorrow, or vice
right.
versa. The person that, helps you today, you may be the person helping them tomorrow. Because life, there's no one ever on top of anyone else, right? And I think that's why we have a great rapport. I think we respect each other as humans. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh, I
Mhm.
know this or you know that. It's like an
Yeah.
exchange of information, of love,
Right.
of
Yeah.
energy. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what it is. And
Yeah.
again, it could be any community. It could be your therapist. It could
Hmm.
be church. It
Yeah.
could be good friends. It could be just someone that, you go hiking with. It's
Yeah.
just creating that community. Super, super important. I love that you said that, because you can't do it alone. It's a lot. It's a
No.
lot.
You
Yeah.
absolutely cannot do it on your own. And I don't think it's fair for anybody to think like you have to. You're not gonna have all the answers.
No,
It's okay to not have the answers. It's
I
okay
still
to
don't
feel
know the
like, oh my
answers.
God, I have no clue what I'm
Yeah.
doing, but I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah.
And you take it one day at a time. You
Yeah.
really take it one day at a time, step by step, because sometimes we also put ourselves so far into the future that it feels really, really scary. Like, parents always ask me like, what is the future for my child? And I'm like, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell
Mhm.
you, but that's not the circumstance. And especially now with this diagnosis, there is a percentage of kids who grow out of the diagnosis,
Yeah.
and so that for me is what I like to focus on. And the reason why I want parents to just understand how important it is to actually get help for your child, and not feel ashamed about any of this, but just to understand that, it's not your fault. A lot of times that's the other thing. We think it's our fault. We beat ourselves up. We are just, feeling so guilty all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one thing that I love that you said is the relationships. And, because you have other children, I think the next thing I'm going to do is like actually interview siblings. But what would you say are some of the things that you were able to do? Because a lot of times the siblings feel neglected. They're like,
Yeah.
you focus so much on that one. I don't ever feel like
They
you care
always joke, the
about
two
me.
girls. So I'm remarried now. I have a blended family. So I have 5 kids, but I'm going to talk about my two biological girls. They always are like, oh yeah, everybody knows Marken's your favorite. And
Yeah.
it's not, it's because of their perspective
Right.
of me always like
Focusing
advocating,
on
but
you.
so
Mhm.
that, whether it's true or not, no, I as a mom, I'm like, absolutely not. Everybody has their moment, right? Like you said, my daughter is competing in a pageant in Miss New York teen, and so she gets all my attention now. Then the other one got it, so it's
Yeah.
right now he gets no attention from me because
Right.
he graduated. It's kind of like he's figuring out life.
Yeah.
So I think from their perspective, and it's also forgiving yourself. So of knowing that you're not perfect, that at any given time your parenting is going to teeter in this end more than that end, and it's just how it is. You're one person. It's
Yeah.
nearly impossible to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
but yeah, I love that you said that, because from their perspective, he's my favorite, and so I
So that they
really
always say
correct
that.
them.
They always say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's what happens. And then I just want to end with you talking a little bit about all his special talents, because he's a really remarkable human being and I love that. And I think, just tell us a little bit about like where he's at and what he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, so he's doing great. He I'll go back to elementary school. It was pretty cool. When he was, I want to say 9, he saved the boy's life in school by doing the Heimlich maneuver. We were even on Good Day New York back
Ah,
back, and he was, yeah, I'll see if I can find that footage. I haven't seen it in forever. But you know, there was a boy choking in the class in the
Cafeteria.
lunchroom.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, I don't think anyone knew first aid. And he, you know, back then where people I guess weren't required, and he went behind and he, you know, saved the boy's life. And
Wow.
yeah, and we were on Good Day New York, and I never asked him, how did you know how to do that?
Oh, how to do that.
So
Yeah.
they asked him live on TV, and I'm like, oh my God, how did he know? Like
Yeah.
I was like, what is he gonna say? And he had this little high pitched voice, was the cutest thing. He was like, by reading the posters, you know, because he was
They're so detailed. They
yeah,
are so detailed
so
with facts.
yeah,
Yeah,
like he
yeah.
was like,
He's like,
duh,
duh,
like, you know,
I read the posters, don't you?
but because he was a loner, right? And because he didn't have a lot of friends, what did he do? And he looks at
Paid
details, right?
attention to
And
those
that's
things.
what he saw. He saw the posters. And so
Oh
I
my
thought that
God, I
was
love
great.
this
Yeah. So he did
story.
that. As I said, he went to high
Yeah,
school. He was in a band in high school. He plays
yeah.
the guitar. He's a very talented
Talented.
songwriter, like natural songwriter per his
Wow.
music teacher in high school, and he still is. So graduated with National Honor Society. Like I said, went to Delphi full scholarship.
Yeah,
He dormed, like he had experiences. He travels. He's very independent.
that's
And now it's just
amazing.
understanding workforce, right? And not just
Yeah,
sticking him anywhere, just to stick him anywhere. I'm just like,
right,
we're going to be patient, and we're
right.
going to
And
figure
find
this
the
out.
right thing
Yeah,
for you.
not somewhere where you will be just you know, go in just to get a
Accepted and
job. No, we want to set it up. So we're being patient with that.
yeah,
But you know, he's exploring different things, and so he's doing great, and
I
super
love
proud
to
of
hear
him.
that. Yeah.
Kindest, most gentle, young
Mm,
man. Still everything is yes, mom. I'm
yeah.
just so I
He's
couldn't ask for a better
respectful.
child. I feel
Yeah.
like he made me a better human. Like I feel like
Yes.
yeah, I'm just a better human because of
Absolutely.
him.
Me
Yeah.
too. I feel like that 1,000%. Like
Yeah.
my child
Yeah.
has such a positive effect on me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
They're more joyful than the average. When he
Yeah.
was a teenager, it's just like the simple things make him happy, and he's just
Yeah.
excited about,
Yeah.
you know, things that yeah. So he's venturing. He's working on getting his license now. He had no real desire, but now that all the younger ones are
Mhm.
driving, he's
He's
like,
like,
all
oh,
right, I'm
I
gonna
want to do
drive.
this
He's
too.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the next chapter. But he's doing great. Very independent, super smart,
Yeah.
funny, just
Yeah.
you know. So I hope that gives others hope,
Yeah.
to know that it is a challenging journey, but there are so many wins across, you know, the you know, the life
Absolutely.
and our life,
Yeah.
right? Because we change
Yes.
because of them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like you said, we become better human beings because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
I know you gotta go, but I want to say thank you, like a big, huge hug to you. A
Thank you.
big, huge thank you for coming on and sharing his story. And maybe we could have him on. Oh my God, would love that.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, I would love to have Markin on, and then he could like play his guitar and everything.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah, I think that'll be awesome. And you know, I just think you're a wonderful mom. You know,
Thank
you just advocate so hard for all your kids, all your kids. Like all of your kids are doing amazing things, and I think that really goes to show your dedication to them. Like you are one. Actually, I want to say like you are the most dedicated mom that I know. You
you.
really are, and I know a
Thank
lot of
you.
moms, Kenya. I know a lot of moms, and you are the most dedicated mom. And I don't want to start crying because you know, I see you always doing these things. I'm so proud of your kids. Every time I see something, I'm like, yep, there. I'm not
Thank
even
you.
surprised. It's just because it's
Oh,
what you do so well, and they're really lucky to have you. And I'm sure sometimes you're like, I don't feel like that, but they really are, and you're lucky to have them too, right? We're all
yes.
really blessed in this way, and you know, it's just amazing the life that you've created for yourself with all the challenges, with all of those, you know, really dark moments. You know, I want to send you a lot of light and love because I love you, amiga.
Thank
And
you.
you know, just thank you so much for taking this time because I know how valuable your time is.
Yeah, no, and yours as well. Like I'm honored. Like, please, I'll be on all the time. We could talk about these things forever. Really grateful. That means the world to me, especially having been a single mom for so long, 7 years, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, there are challenges, but really, I think what helped me is just being what you see is me just trying to be in the present moment. Like, I'm just like this moment. And so I appreciate you seeing that, and it means the absolute world. So thank you. And thank you for having me. And, I look forward to being back.
Yeah, we definitely will invite you
Yeah.
back. And I love you so much. And do your thing, girl. I'm always rooting for you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your family and friends. Also, join me for my group parenting sessions. I want you to be the first to know, so go directly to my website at www.drdivinalopez.com and share your email with me. That way you'll be the first to know when sessions start. Also, you can find me on Instagram at Dancing Into Parenthood and on TikTok at Dr. Divina Lopez. Also, if you like this podcast, please subscribe. That way you always know when a new episode drops. I love you. Bye.
Please keep in mind that all advice given in this podcast is general information. To understand your specific situation, you must consult with your pediatrician.